Newcastle being linked with Nicolas Jackson. Sounds straightforward, until you notice how little of it is actually finished. Manchester United are monitoring Rafael Leão. Liverpool supporters are decoding a Fabrizio Romano hint like it is a state secret. And Chelsea have one headline that talks much louder than its proof. That is the trap with this part of the season. If you only read the bold text, the market looks alive. If you read the details, half of it is smoke with club badges on it. Back with Just Soccer, and the first question is the one the headline tries to skip. Are Newcastle seriously weighing Nicolas Jackson, or has a loose idea already been dressed up to look like a plan? Start with the link that feels loudest, because loud and solid are not the same thing. Newcastle and Nicolas Jackson is interesting precisely because it is still only a rumor with a football argument hiding inside it. Papers: Newcastle interested in signing Nicolas Jackson after Bayern Munich decide to end loan in summer. This reads like early market interest, not a move close to completion. Jackson is the kind of forward who creates a split instantly, useful chaos for one side of the debate, unreliable finishing for the other. If Newcastle are truly looking, the bigger story is what they think their attack still lacks. Sky Sports Paper Talk reports that Newcastle are interested in signing Nicolas Jackson, and the same report says Bayern Munich will decide to end his loan in the summer. That gives the story a real starting point, but not much beyond that. There is no supported bid amount in the supplied material, no accepted offer, and no basis for claiming Jackson will definitely leave Chelsea. What keeps the rumor alive is the profile. Jackson can stretch a back line, run hard into channels, and make defenders feel like they are being bothered for 90 minutes straight. Coaches tend to appreciate that even when supporters are rolling their eyes at the finishing clips. Newcastle fans debating whether the club needs movement or a more clinical penalty box striker are not nitpicking. They are asking the question that decides whether a link like this makes sporting sense or just creates noise. Chelsea sit awkwardly in the background of all this because every Jackson story becomes a motive test. Is Newcastle genuinely planning ahead? Is someone in the market making sure his name stays warm? Or is this another report that gets extra oxygen because the clubs are big and the player is recognizable? Reports suggest interest after Bayern Munich move toward ending the loan in the summer. That is the safe line. Everything heavier than that starts wandering away from the evidence. From a striker who divides opinion to a winger who sells dreams in 5 seconds flat, the next rumor is pure glamour, which is exactly why the wording matters more than the badge combination. Transfer rumors: Man United monitor AC Milan's Rafael Leão. Monitoring a player is not the same thing as moving for him, no matter how often coverage blurs that line. Rafael Leão is a thrilling name, but thrilling names have not exactly rescued every flawed squad they join. This rumor flatters Manchester United's image before it proves Manchester United have a working plan. ESPN transfer rumors state that Manchester United are monitoring AC Milan's Rafael Leão. That word, monitoring, is doing nearly all the work. It can mean admiration, background checks, market awareness, or simply keeping a file updated in case circumstances change later. It does not mean an offer has gone in, and it certainly does not prove a deal is moving. Leão is easy to sell because the talent is obvious. He can carry the ball over distance, break open a game from a wide position, and make defenders backpedal in a panic. The harder question is the one transfer chatter likes to avoid. If Manchester United made a huge move for him, would that solve a central weakness, or would it just place another expensive spotlight on a team still searching for balance? Supporters have lived through enough glamorous pitches to know that star power and squad coherence are not twins. There is also the usual market issue with a player like this. If the interest ever became more than monitoring, the cost would be severe and the competition would not be polite. Fans asking whether Leão's ceiling justifies that kind of spending are at least looking at the right problem. The gamble would not only be the fee. The real gamble would be importing superstar expectations into a side that still too often looks like it is arguing with its own shape. Now the genre changes completely. Less direct reporting, more modern football code breaking, with supporters trying to solve a mystery because a trusted name gave them a wink. Fabrizio Romano gives massive hint about Liverpool's next signing, Anfield watch. A hint is still only a hint, even when the headline tries to sell it like a trailer for the final act. Liverpool fans are reacting to a real squad question, but content machines know exactly how to turn that curiosity into certainty theater. Sometimes the smartest conversation around a rumor is the one about need, not the one about a secret name. Anfield Watch reports that Fabrizio Romano has given a massive hint about Liverpool's next signing. Fine, but the supplied evidence stays at headline level and does not show an official agreement, completed deal, or even terms being advanced. Once a familiar transfer insider appears in the headline, a lot of people stop reading carefully. That is how implication starts masquerading as proof. Liverpool supporters are especially vulnerable to this kind of story because one clue can trigger a full tactical referendum. A phrase gets clipped, a post gets shared, and suddenly thousands of people are speaking with the confidence of assistant sporting directors. It is entertaining and also a little ridiculous. Football rumor culture has turned maybe into a full-time profession. The useful part of the conversation is not the detective work, it is the squad diagnosis underneath it. Fans are trying to work out where Liverpool believe the next pressure point sits: defense, midfield depth, or a different attacking profile. That is a real football discussion. The transfer itself, though, is not supported as done, close, or agreed. Right now the story is a spark, a trusted messenger, and a lot of interpretation doing cardio. And then comes the headline that barges into the room wearing too much confidence. Some stories invite excitement. This one invites a pause and a request for receipts. Chelsea get Anthony Gordon chance as Nicolas Jackson decision confirmed. Chelsea transfer update roundup. This is exactly the sort of transfer framing that outruns its proof almost immediately. The supplied material does not verify the Nicolas Jackson and Anthony Gordon sequence strongly enough to treat it as settled. Healthy skepticism here is not negativity. It is basic reading comprehension with a football scarf on. The headline claims Chelsea have an Anthony Gordon chance because the Nicolas Jackson decision has been confirmed. That would be significant if the supplied material actually supported it. It does not. There is no usable source evidence here that confirms an official Jackson transfer destination, and there is no support for saying Anthony Gordon has agreed to move. Stories like this spread because they are built for speed. One forceful line appears, supporters skip straight to whether Gordon is worth the cost, and before long the conversation behaves as if the first step has already happened. Football transfer coverage loves that trick. Dress possibility in confident language and let the audience supply the missing evidence themselves. Chelsea may well be assessing alternatives or wide options. Big clubs constantly scan multiple profiles. The honest read is narrower and much less cinematic. The source material does not let anyone state an official Jackson outcome, and it certainly does not let anyone present Gordon as close. Until that changes, this is not a confirmed chain of events. It is a dramatic roundup headline trying to sound more informed than it can currently prove. After a headline that overreaches, this next one gets stretched by the audience in a different way. The source talks about performance and momentum, but fans naturally try to turn momentum into market prophecy. Arsenal on a mission? Is another special season on the horizon? This is not transfer reporting, and forcing it into that box only weakens what the actual story says. Ambition on the pitch often gets misread as proof of ambition in the next window. The article tells you plenty about Arsenal's competitive level and nothing definite about an incoming player. The BBC source here is about Arsenal being one game away from a second successive Women's Champions League final and still being in the Women's Super League title race. Those are the supported facts. The supplied material does not support any claim that a player has agreed to join Arsenal, and it should not be treated like hidden recruitment reporting just because supporters are already thinking ahead. Fans do this all the time, to be fair. A team looks strong, and people assume the club will match that feeling with aggressive spending. A team looks exposed, and every rumor suddenly feels urgent and prophetic. Sometimes that instinct lands on something real. Other times it turns a serious sporting story into fan fiction wearing a tie and carrying a transfer graph. The grounded takeaway is strong enough without any embellishment. Arsenal being described as on a mission tells you about standards, consistency, and pressure at the top end of competition. Supporters may read that as a sign that the club will think big in future windows, and emotionally that makes sense. As evidence for a transfer though, the article stops at title race reality and European ambition. Anything beyond that is imagination borrowing the microphone. Staying with Chelsea, this one is not a transfer story at all, but it still matters if you care about how clubs make decisions. One cup run can change executive moods faster than months of sober analysis, which is usually where the danger starts. McFarlane delighted Chelsea stop the rot by beating Leeds in FA Cup semi-final. Cup progress does not confirm signings, but it absolutely affects the internal weather around planning. A short burst of relief can make a club forget why it was anxious in the first place. Chelsea reaching the final matters, yet it should not be used as a smoke machine for larger structural questions. The Guardian reports that interim manager Callum McFarlane said Chelsea had to break the momentum around Leeds as his side reached the FA Cup final. That is match reporting context, not transfer evidence, and keeping those categories separate matters. Still, a result like this has consequences. Football clubs do not make decisions in a vacuum. They make them in moods, and success can soften urgency very quickly. Supporters will hear two competing voices around this. One says a bit of stability may finally be emerging. Perhaps the squad needed clearer direction. Perhaps the panic was excessive. The other voice says calm down because a cup run has fooled plenty of boardrooms before. Chelsea have generated enough volatility that both reactions sound plausible, which tells you all you need to know about their wider uncertainty. So no, there is no hidden contract news here and no fresh signing being smuggled into the story. What this does show is how a victory changes the climate around future choices. Reaching a final can alter priorities, delay harder judgments, and make a club feel healthier than its underlying football really is. If those flaws reappear after the celebration, that temporary comfort turns into a very expensive misread. Results can influence planning over weeks. Injury news can force a rethink in a single afternoon. That is why this kind of headline gets attention even when the details are still annoyingly thin. Atletico Madrid difficult injury update days before Arsenal tie amid triple scare football London. Injury reports can reshape a major tie instantly, even when they tell us nothing about transfers. The real mistake here would be pretending the supplied evidence gives more detail than it actually does. Big matches expose squad depth brutally, and every missing player sharpens that pressure. Football London is cited with a headline about a difficult Atletico Madrid injury update and a triple scare before an Arsenal tie. The problem is simple. The supplied evidence is limited to headline and summary level. We are not given enough verified detail to name specific absences with confidence, and treating vague concern like a confirmed casualty list would be reckless. Even with that caution, the interest is obvious. A major European tie magnifies everything. One fitness doubt can alter the press, one late withdrawal can bend the midfield shape, and one forced change at the back can shift how brave a team feels out of possession. Arsenal fans discussing whether opponent absences could change the tactical picture are behaving like normal football obsessives. Fair enough. The step from headline anxiety to fake certainty is the part that needs policing. From a squad building angle, this is the kind of moment that reminds you what depth is actually for. Clubs do not only buy stars, they buy reliability, rotation trust, and protection against the weak when everything goes wrong at once. For now though, the story supports only a difficult injury update in broad terms. It does not support naming absentees or inventing a transfer angle that is not there. The last story is another perfect example of football chatter mutating on contact with the internet. By the time some people repeat the headline, they are already discussing a different story entirely. Premier League set to confirm Tottenham decision after Chelsea beat Leeds United. Football London. This is public conversation outrunning the source material at full sprint. The supplied evidence points to a Tottenham decision being confirmed, not to survival odds drama floating around elsewhere. Once the facts get stretched, panic-buying fantasies tend to arrive right on schedule. The supplied material does not support the supercomputer survival odds framing attached to this topic in some corners of the conversation. What we actually have is a Football London headline saying the Premier League is set to confirm a Tottenham decision after Chelsea beat Leeds United. That difference is not cosmetic. It changes the whole shape of the story and the kind of conclusions people are allowed to draw from it. Why does that matter in an episode like this? Because football discussion has a habit of turning every pressure point into recruitment prophecy. A club faces a decision, a shift in standings, or a bureaucratic consequence, and suddenly social media starts acting like emergency bids are already being typed. It is dramatic, and sometimes quite funny, but it is also how people lose the original reporting within minutes. So the clean read is the only read worth keeping. The evidence supports a decision confirmation headline and nothing more elaborate than that. It does not prove transfer targets, it does not justify survival odds panic, and it does not let anyone present speculation as if a medical has been booked. Tottenham may face consequences from whatever the Premier League is set to confirm, but pressure is not a signing, and anxiety does not count as a transfer plan. That is the pattern running through the whole episode. Newcastle and Nicolas Jackson may be genuine early planning, but early is the key word. Manchester United monitoring Rafael Leão is still only monitoring. Liverpool's so-called massive hint remains a clue, not a contract. Chelsea have one headline that reaches beyond its proof. Arsenal have a performance story that should not be forced into transfer reporting, and the final two pieces show how quickly context gets inflated when people are desperate for certainty. Football news does not only report the market, it performs the market, often with better lighting than evidence. The smart move is not to sneer at every rumor. It is to keep asking the uncomfortable question: who benefits when a half-built story suddenly starts talking like a finished deal?